Hello friend, welcome back. In our previous video, I have already discussed about that things with you, how you can load your HTML template, right? So now for every HTML template, we will need our CSS, we will need our JSS file, and also we need to add all that our images, right? So now here, how you can actually add your all that static file in this video, I will show you that things with a live example. So for doing this, go to our project directory. So into this project directory, so I have already created another one of the folder as a template folder in our main file directory. That means in our my first project area, right? So into this project folder, in particular that folder area, I want to create another folder for our all that static data. I take one of the folder name and I just name it as a static. Okay, I just name it as a static and now click as enter. Now you can see it's now created one of the folder name as a static. So into the static folder, I want to define all that our CSS, I can define all that our JSS, and also I can define that images. So right now, first of all, I want to add some of the images. So here I want to create new folder and I just name that folder name will be as images. Okay, I just name it as the images folder. So that means in our static, so that is our images folder. So for education purpose, if you go to our exercise file, here I have already defined one of the file, one of the image as a Django course. So in our project, so right now we are working in our Django project, that is our first project. Here I have created a static folder and the images, and here I just simply paste it. Okay friend, so here I just simply define one of the image, and that is actually the PNG image. I just name it as a image right now for education purpose. So I'm just using as image, right? So now I want to actually visible this image in our this page area. So how can do that work? For doing this, we have to do, first of all, we have to actually load our this static folder in our project directory. So we have already did that work for our template. So now we have to do the same things. Now if you go to our project, that means my first project, and here go to that setting file. And with the setting here, you can see previously I have already defined our template directory. To this template directory, I define our specific path, right? So now I want to do the same things. I just simply copy it, and now I just take another one. Sorry. So here I just simply paste it. So now I want to take one of the variable. I take one of the variable as a static. Okay, I just name it as a static underscore directory, and then it will be our path into the path area. I want to join our base directory. That means our base directory. I have already discussed about that things with you. Into the base directory, now I want to join our another folder, our folder name as a static. So now here I define as a static. Okay, I just simply define our folder name. It will be joined with our main path area. Okay friend, so I just simply define our static folder, and after that we have to also define our this static, this variable. Okay, we have to defining it in our, if you go, then they have also another function. Like here you can see that is actually static files, all that static file, they have also one of the common by default. That means here you can define your all that static files, CSS, JavaScript, and the images in particular that area. So by default, that is one of the variable as a static file, and here you can see that by default is created as a static. So now I want to define another one. So here I define another one as a static files underscore directory. So I just simply define as a directory names. Okay, and then I take one of the variable, and in particular that position I want to define our variable that I have already defined our with the path. So I have already path that things with this variable, that means the static directory. So I just simply copy it, and now here, so after this here I want to simply define that. Okay, so here I just simply defining it. So I just simply defining it on here. So that's all you have to do in our setting. So here I have just simply defining it, and now go to our index, that means in our index page. So in our index page here I want to visible it. So here first of all, if you want to display that image, I think you already know about it. You have to defining it with the image tag into the image, that is actually the SRC, right? So right now we don't need this alter tag. So into the, if you want to load that your image, that means your src in particular, that position, first of all you have to load your static all that file, right? So here you have to load it in particular that position. So here I just simply defining it. So with the single curly bracket, here you have to define your, first of all, that is a 2%. Sorry, there is a 2%. Into this 2%, in particular that area you have to load. Okay, you have to load your static. So I just simply define our static, all that file on particular that position. Okay, so now we in particular that area, that means in our src, here I want to load our images, that means in our static, that is our images, and that is our image. So if you want to visible that image in Python, then how you can do that work? You can define that things with the curly bracket, and with the curly bracket also you have to define the double percentage. Into the double percentage I have defined that things with this static, right? So with this static you have to define your image path. So here I have already defined our image path in our images folder. Into the images folder, our image name. So into the images folder, that is our image name. So I just simply define as image, right? And into the image, then our extension as a png. So I just simply define as a png. Okay friend, so here you have to define it, and now I want to check it. So now I open our console, and here I just simply click as a save all. Now you can see they have no error, that is actually our route is perfectly running. So now if you go here, click as a refresh, and here they have some of the error as invalid block tag in 12 as a static. Did you forget to register or load this tag? Actually it's not getting that our static this data. That means this data is not getting. If you go to our project, that is our index, here you can see I define on the spaces. So I just simply define as this one. Okay, that means the load static data. So now let's check this out again. Click on the save all. I want to run it our server again. Better I just simply put some of the spaces, then it should be actually run. You can see it's actually again running. Yeah, now you can see it's now perfectly showing our address. Now let's check this out. Click as a refresh. Yes, you can see perfect. So friend, here I have defined some of the wrong, like here I put some of the spaces. Okay, so here after that our curly bracket I put some of the spaces, and after that I just define our percentage. So here make that sure they have no spaces. Okay, so right now I just simply defining it. So now you can see it's now perfectly visible our page. So that is our h1 tag, that is our h22 tag, and that is actually our images, and that is our text, right? That is the id text. So better I want to define some of the bracket, like here. After this I just simply define some of the bracket. Okay, I just simply define 2 bracket. Now click as a save all again, and now refresh it. Perfect. So here friend, we successfully added our resources. That means our static on the data, that is our images, is now perfectly visible. And also here if you want to access our root, that means our home directory. So here right now I want to do, if you go to our URL, that means our first project URL, here you can see into the first project URL I have defined as a customer. So now I want to make the things as a empty right now. Okay, so I just simply define as a empty. And also in our fast app, so into the fast app in our URL I have defined that when it should be as a empty, it should be directed to our index function. And into the index function I have already defining it in our view. Into the view in our index function I have already defined our this request, right? Here I have defined our template as in our fast app, and that is our index HTML. So now if you click as a save all, I just click as a save all, server is running. So right now we don't need to use that our this URL as a customer. So now I want to use our home. Yeah, you can see it's now perfectly getting our title, it's now perfectly getting our all that page. So friend, here also if you want to add that CSS, like here I want to add some of the CSS, and with this CSS I want to change our this color, that means our H1 color. So how can do this work? It's pretty much simple things. I think you already know about it, what exactly you have to do in our static. So I have already defined our images, and now for the CSS I want to create another folder, and I just name that folder as a CSS. Okay, so I just simply define another folder name as a CSS, and into the CSS folder I want to create another new file, and I just name that file as a my style. .css, one of the mystyle.css file. I just simply defining it on here. So in particular that position, if you go to our index HTML, here I have defined our h1 tag, right? So now I want to define our this h1 tag. So into the this h1 tag I want to define some of the class. So I just simply define as h1, and for the h1 I just simply define that color, and color will be as a red. Right now I just simply define as a red. So now we have to add our this CSS. That means here I have created one of the CSS as a mystyle.css. So now we have to include our this CSS in our index. That means in our index HTML file. So into this position, if you want to add that index, then you have to add it in our head position, right? So now into the head area. So after this, here I want to link this. So I just simply define as a link. So into the link, that is our style sheet, and that is our href. And into this href, we have to defining it. So if you want to define, first of all, that it will be as a curly bracket, and then the double %, right? And then you have to define with the static, because here I have defined load our static. So with this static, we have to defining it. It's just like that same what exactly we did for our images. So now we want to load our static data for our CSS. So that is in our CSS folder. So I just simply define as a folder name, and after that our file name as a mystyle.css, right? So I just simply define as a CSS and the mystyle.css. Perfect. So we successfully load it. So now let's check this out. If you now click as a save all, I just click as a save all. Now refresh it. Yes, now you can see it's now perfectly getting our CSS. So it's perfectly getting the CSS, and our this h1 tag is now become changed, and they have some of the mistakes. Maybe I defining it here. You can see that is actually that. So I just simply remove it, click as a save all, and now refresh it. Perfect. So friend, I hope you can well understand about it, how can add your static all that resources. So here I added our images, and also I added all that CSS. So that is actually the main procedure. If you want to add your all that CSS in Python, then you have to add it with like that way. Okay. So literally we'll actually make the things dynamic. So right now that is all that our static image. So literally we'll dynamic it. So from our database, if you want to display it, how can do that work? I will step by step I will show you. So step by step we'll go more deep. So that's all actually the main basic things. So I have designed these codes like that way. First of all, you just know that basic, all the fundamental. So if you well understand about all that basic main core things, then how much easy to create any project with using that Django. I hope step by step you will well understand about it. So friend, in our next video, we will start a new session. It's about the Django models. So how can working with this Django models? In our next video, I will show you that things with a live example. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.